Hello, welcome to Real to Real Talk. I am your host, Paul Britton. I will be talking about one thing and one thing only today, and that is the movie Civil War. Why? Because that's all I had time to go see this weekend, and there weren't any major streaming releases, and I probably should have saved a couple of my streaming release reviews last week for this week. Poor planning. That's okay, because you know why? Civil War is a movie worth talking in depthly about. So this is coming from writer director Alex Garland. Just to give a quick overview of some of Garland's bona fides. Okay, just talking movies now, not the novels that he wrote, including The Beach and The Tesseract. His first movie that he wrote was 28 Days Later, and for my money, I mean, and I know Romero is Romero and he's a god and everything. I love 28 Days Later. Like that's the zombie movie for me. Um, you know, uh, hot take, whatever you want to call it. That's where I am. And then he also wrote Sunshine, fantastic movie. I highly recommend you go and checking that out. And then he wrote Dread, which people seem to like, which is good. And then he wrote Ex Machina, which he also directed, by the way. That was his first directorial debut. And then he pretty much would go on to direct everything he wrote. And it would be so after Ex Machina, it's Annihilation, which is a very understated, excellent movie. Men, which was one of, in my top 5 for 2022, maybe top 3 for 2022. I'd have to go back and look at the full list. And now he's done Civil War. So this is a guy, in my opinion, just A plus plus lister. Just as far as quality and he hasn't done a lot, obviously. I mean, that's not a super long list. What he's directed is even significantly more, not a lot, but everything he's done I have enjoyed, and that's really, really, really hard. I mean, there, even some of my favorites like Wes Anderson or Paul Thomas Anderson, they have a movie in that, like Darjeeling Limited for Wes Anderson. Not my cup of tea. Get it? I made a joke there. All right. But yeah, it's just not something. It's like I've watched once, maybe twice. Don't know that I'd ever really have a desire to go back to it. Paul Thomas Anderson, and I know it's really good and people love it, and they talk about the master. Guess what? The criticism of being super long and super slow and not really much of anything happening, valid criticisms. It's super long, it's super slow, and not a whole lot of much of anything happens. It's superbly made, but my point being, Garland doesn't have one of those for me yet. The thing about his movies, starting with 28 Days Later and just moving on through, is that he really does an amazing job of setting up a world. And by that I mean he just plops you down into the world and says this is the world that we're in. And just as long. So one of the things that I say a lot on this show is, that I try my best as often as possible to to take the movie at its face value, to review the movie, to watch the movie on its own terms, and not in the terms of the movie I would have rather have seen. Okay. And there are instances where I will say, oh, well, this would have worked better. And my suggestions, I try not to make it make my suggestions be like, this is a totally different movie than what was presented, and this is how it should have been. I try not to do that. Every once in a while I will, and I will come out and acknowledge that that's what I'm doing, and so take it or leave it. But I try really hard to meet the movie on its terms, meet the movie on the director's terms, and accept that, and watch it. Which is why, by the way, I can be really critical of movies that other people say are masterpieces or are amazing. Like The Irishman is a perfect example. I There's so many people that defend that movie based on things that aren't in the movie. And it's like, no, you don't get credit for things that you don't put in the movie. And that's why I like Civil War, because here's the reality is that there has been Civil War has gotten mostly positive reviews. It did very well over the weekend. Um, but the negative reviews focus on the fact that you're placed the movie starts with a civil war raging in the United States. The Western Alliance of basically the from Texas all the way up to Washington. All right, so all of those states and have split, and then there's also a Florida alliance, which is a smaller contingent of states. I think it's just Florida, Georgia, and like Alabama or something like that. They have also split, and the criticism is, oh well, we don't really know why, how, where. Not the story the movie's telling. It's so blatantly obvious so early on with this movie that the how did we get here is not at all the story this movie is trying to tell. Okay, at all. We're introduced to our two main leads, Kirsten Dunst and Wagner Moura, play Lee and Joel, a pair of Reuters journalists who are in New York City. New York City doesn't even have water. Like, people are lining up just to get water. And they are joined by Kaylee Spaney, who we most recently saw as Priscilla Presley in Priscilla. And it's just not going well. And the president of the United States, such as they are, is played by Nick Offerman. And we see very brief snippets of him. The background that you are given, and it's super light. The background that you are given is he's in his third term. That's a red flag. The background that you are given is that journalists are shot on site in Washington, D.C. Another red flag. And that's it. Like that's literally, other than these are the factions that are fighting against the United States. These are these are the splinter groups, the secessionists. Other than that, there's no labels put on anybody. Obviously, shooting journalists on site would give an implication that he's probably a fascist. There's other hints, but it's not like, and nobody ever comes out and says, yeah, this guy's a fascist. It's just, he's just a guy who's clearly overstayed his welcome, and some other states aren't very happy about it. And the story that this movie tells is not that story. The story this movie tells is these journalists are trying to get from New York City to Washington, D.C., and they can't go down I-95. And that's it. That's all you need to know. You can't, Jack, I-95 is not even an option. So that means you're going to have to swing all the way the fuck out to Pittsburgh and head in from that direction. And the movie is about how these three journalists, plus joined by a fourth whose name is escaping me. Why is he not one of the top 5 people credited? Oh, there he is. Stephen McKinley, who is just, amazing. Older gentleman. He's been in so many things. He was most recently in the first Dune movie. He did not show up in Dune 2. But and it's their trip in an SUV across basically Pennsylvania for the most part, and then they get into West Virginia and Virginia, and the terribleness that they witness. I mean, it's really just a movie of these are terrible things that happen during a Civil War vignettes. A better movie, I would say, is the most recent best documentary winner. I believe it was 20 Days in Madripoor, or it was X number of days in Madripoor, whatever it was. Totally worth it. Absolutely amazing. That's the true story. Okay, that's the true story of journalists stuck in a war zone. This is the fictionalized story, and These journalists are, like very early on, they are not feeling people. They're not compassionate people. Okay, that's not what they're here to do. They are here to get a story. And does that make them good or bad? I don't know. Does that make them important? Yeah, probably. And these are the things that they experience are terrible, just friggin' terrible. And there's no veneer on that, and there's no nor is there judgment on it. It's just that here you are, here it is. If you're mad because you didn't get the a 30-minute disclaimer on recent history, I'm sorry, that's not what this movie's about. If you're mad because the movie's not condemning fascism, which, by the way, I condemn fascism, I'm sorry, that's not what this movie's about. This movie's not about taking a side. It's not about that. It's about watching the people who, as their jobs, cannot take a side. So of course the movie's not going to take a side. The movie at most is going to take the side of, we kind of really need journalists, and we probably shouldn't be killing them. And that's even a stretch. Like that's even a stretch for what it's trying to communicate. And if you go into this movie and meet it on its own terms and say, I'm here to watch Alex Garland's Civil War, not I'm here to watch what I think Alex Garland should make for Civil War, this is a great movie. Just fantastic. It's easily the second best movie I've seen this year. Easily. Not even close. Not even close to close. I really, really like this movie a lot. Saw it in IMAX. I definitely recommend big, huge screen. This movie is ready to take you on a ride, and it's not a comfortable ride, but you'll be entertained. Disturbed, probably. Entertained, yeah. I mean, you're gonna see a good movie. If you honestly, if you're somebody who it's going to annoy you that you don't know why Texas and California are on the same team. And by the way, I definitely have a preference between those two states. Okay, I have a preference between those two states, and I thought when I saw the trailers, I was like, oh, how is that going to work? And then I got into the movie and I didn't care. Like, it was just like, I knew, all right, that's not the story. That's not the story they're telling here. The story they're telling here is this other thing. And it's unpleasant and bad and important. I'll be honest. Yeah, it's important. It's like, yeah, you lose something when you go to war. You lose it. And man, this movie really questions whether or not getting it back is even in the books. So here at Real to Real Talk, we give movies taco ratings, 1 to 5 tacos, and if a movie is more than a whole taco and warrants a little bit of extra, we don't do a half a taco because nobody eats a half a fucking taco. We add some guac to it. All right. So this movie is getting guac. This movie's getting four tacos plus guac. It's not quite a 5 taco movie, but goddamn, these tacos are really good. And then guac comes with it, and it is really, really good, nice, limey guacamole. I want to know that there's lime in the guacamole. A little bit about me. That's it. Like, that's all I got for you. I'm doing 15 minutes. I hope you all are well. I should be back next week. Situations may prevent, but I am hoping to be back next week. There's a new movie from Guy Ritchie, a favorite here at our podcast. And so, check it out. That's the movie I'm going to be doing next week if I get to anything. So I'm hopeful I can. So hopefully I'll see you next week. And I hope you all go out and check out some movies. Go check out Civil War. Do it.